Hi everyone, welcome to our first Data Insights webinar. Today we are going to discuss multi-source reasoning. Now these are in fact the toughest questions in GMAT currently, and this reputation is well earned, it's well deserved. Certainly they are. It's not like bold-faced questions where people used to think that they're difficult, but actually they were some of the simplest questions in critical reasoning. It's not like that, yeah. The MSR questions can get a little tricky, and a lot of you have, put in a request to discuss one of our sets also on video. So today we're going to do that. The solution is there in your module, so don't worry about that. We're going to discuss the thought process, right? One, we are going to discuss the strategy that we use for MSR questions, how to, there are, two or three tabs, data is at different places, not everything is visible to you at all times. So that is why you need to do something to ensure that you're able to solve the questions effectively. So we'll discuss that strategy. And we'll discuss the thought process, that what is it that I read and then what came to my mind and why should it come to your mind as well. What should spark that suddenly you should think about it, that now next step should be this, right? In MSR that gets a little difficult because there is so many small pieces of data, and handling them all together gets a little tricky, right? So we'll try to discuss more on the thought process side of it. As I said, the solution is already there. We'll discuss the strategy on how to solve MSR questions effectively. Yeah. So I'll share my screen with you right now, right? You have three tabs over here. Of course, we can click on any tab any number of times in whatever order, it doesn't matter. But then one tab is visible to you at one time, as in you cannot look at all the three tabs simultaneously. And that is what creates a problem. Because usually you're is there a problem? Okay. The raised arts I'm struggling with here. Right. So we'll take that later. No worries. You can write into admin@anaprep.com as well, and we'll take a look. You let us know. In case there are any issues, you let us know and we'll resolve them. Okay. So yeah, coming back to MSR, we have two or three tabs, and then we can switch between them as and when we like, but we cannot look at them all of them together. And usually your questions will depend on the data given in two or three tabs. Usually they'll not be based on one tab alone. So it's not like I can just, click on one and then stay there and solve the question, then go on to the next, right? So then what do we have to do? It is important to compile the data of, if there are three tabs, then to compile the data of two of the tabs and then go on to the third one. You can keep that open and you can solve the question with that open at all times. So usually, let's say if there are three tabs, then your third tab will have, for example, a table or a diagram or something with concentrated data. So that is where you can stop. And you will need to compile the data of tab 1 and tab 2. Otherwise, you are going to reread tab 1 and tab 2 multiple times. You're going to get confused in what was given where, right? So you'll end up wasting a whole lot of time. Look, I'm sure you feel that, jotting down the data of a tab, this is going to take time, etc. Yes, I agree. Assume that you will take 1 minute to jot down the data of one tab. So that means that, 2 extra minutes go there. Then you're able to solve the questions much faster once you do that. All the data is right there in front of your eyes. Yeah. Also, you'll not write down each and every word that is there in the tab. You will use a shorthand. That is, you will use some symbols. You will just, use, let's say, two letters to identify something. And then I'll discuss how we'll do that. No worries about it. Yeah. So let's look at this. A small manufacturing company, CareCorp, produces three types of products: diodes, drivers, and switches. Do we need to write this down? No. Look at this. Look, the question has all these three. We don't need to write that, right? I mean, it'll be used enough that we don't have to worry about writing this down. Okay, each product requires a different combination of raw materials and labor hours to produce. All right, this is what is expected. In case we were given that the number of hours required for diodes and drivers is the same, now that is something we would need to jot down, because that is something which is not expected. This is something which is expected. the company's goal is to maximize its profit while adhering to the following constraints. So now, yeah, the aim is what? The aim is to maximize the profit, right? There could be a question later on which says, will the company achieve its aim or not? And then you might need to worry about, oh, what was the aim? Because this is no, I mean, we don't, I mean, it is obvious, but then still, right? It is given to us what the aim is. So we should write that down. We say aim is to maximize the profit. All right. Now, the total number of workers available is 30, each of whom works for 8 hours a day. Now, this is data that we, of course, need to write down. We have 30 workers, 8 hours a day, which means that we have total 240 hours available every day. Yeah. You can use shorthand over here. You can just write W for workers, of course, right? Whatever, the way it works best for you. Now, the company can obtain a maximum of total 300 units of silicon and 50 units of germanium per day. So then these must be the raw material, right? Because we are making diodes, drivers, and switches, and it requires a different combination of raw materials we've been given. So then these must be the raw materials, silicon and germanium, 300 units and 550 units per day. So we'll write down this as well. And this is the entire data of our tab 1. So we're done with this tab, we do not need to come back to this tab anymore, right? Let's go on to our tab 2. This is the data that we already have. We gathered it from tab 1. Now we look at tab 2. One diode requires 5 hours of labor, 3 units of silicon, and 1 unit of germanium to produce. One driver requires blah, blah, and one switch requires blah, blah. So again, this is data that we will need. Obviously, we are given that, how many units of labor hours are required for each product, how many units of silicon and how many. So then this we should jot down like this. Yeah, we say diode 5 hours, 3 silicon, 1 germanium, and we should write them one under the other so that it is easy to compare. Yeah, I mean, I have written diode here, then 5 hours, right under it is driver, 4 hours, right under it is switch, 2 hours, because then I can just go down vertically to compare. Right, if I were to write them in a line, let's say diode was here, and then right next to it was driver, and right next to it was switch, I would have a harder time comparing. Okay, how many hours were here? How many hours were there? Right? It should be visually written in a way that it is easy for us to compare various elements. So then silicon also, 3 silicon, 2 silicon, 4 silicon. I know diode, driver, switch, right? And then 1 germanium, 2 germanium. So now this is all the information that was there in our tab 2. So now our tab 1 and tab 2 are done. Now we go on to our tab 3, and this is the data that we have figured out from the tab 1 and tab 2. Okay? We'll keep this. We'll stay on our tab 3 now. We do not need to write this down. This is right there in front of our eyes. If required, we will evaluate it as per the question's demands, right? Currently, we need to do nothing about it. Now what we'll do is we'll look at the question. Let's take a look at it. So question 1, mark possible if the company can produce the 3 products in the following quantities in a day. So we have 2 options here. We have a possible or a not possible. In one day, can the company produce 50 diodes, 25 drivers, and 25 switches? This is your one question. In one day, can the company produce 45 diodes, 30 drivers, and 10 switches? This is your another question. So essentially, this one question has 3 sub-questions inside it, right? They are independent of each other, though they are similar, right? Now, if it is possible that the company can manufacture, let's say 50 diodes, 25 drivers, and 25 switches, then we'll mark possible. Otherwise, we'll mark not possible, right? The question is clear? Okay, can the company make 50 diodes? Let's see what does 50 diodes need. One diode needs 5 hours, right? Then 50 diodes need 250 hours. But look at that. We have only total 240 hours. So then this is not possible, right? Our first one is not possible. Okay, let's look at the second one. Of course, if 50 diodes are not possible, 50 diodes plus 25 drivers plus 25 switches are anyway not possible. We don't have to look at that at all, right? We've already got our answer that this is not possible, because in the first place, we can't make 50 diodes. Forget about the other things as well. Yeah, ignore. Look at the next one. 45 diodes. Okay. 45 diodes need 5 hours, 3 silicon, 1 germanium. It all seems that this is fine. This is, possible. 30 drivers, look at 30 drivers. You need 4 hours, 2 silicon, 2 germanium. Look, we have less of germanium. Did you notice that? We have silicon 300 and we have germanium only 50, right? This is a ratio of 6:1. But then look at in a diode, you need a silicon to germanium, the ratio 3:1. And in a driver, in the ratio 1:1. Actually, you have a lot more of silicon. Yeah, in a switch, you need only silicon. So, probably that is why it kind of adds up, whatever. But we do notice that we have less of germanium. We have only 50 units of germanium, right? Now, one driver needs 2 units of germanium. Can I make 30 drivers? Well, no, because then I would need 60 units of germanium, but I have only total 50. So then in the second one, 30 drivers is not possible. Forget about making 45 diodes and 10 switches as well. Look, anyway, when we say 45, we don't have to do all the calculation. I mean, 45 is a large number, so it will take away a lot of resources, but then it certainly seems possible. So then we might as well switch to the next one and see whether that is possible or not. And, once we see that all three are possible, then we'll combine and see whether we can still make them, right? But then in the very second step, we found that 30 drivers are not possible. So then the second one is also not possible. Not enough because we need 60 germanium, but we have only 50 total. Look at the third one, 18 diodes, 20 drivers, and 50 switches. Well, the numbers are now a little more decent, more control. It is possible that this may work out, even though 50 switches seems like a lot, but still, all right. We know germanium is less, so let's just check for germanium first of all. If I make 20 drivers, I need 40 units of germanium. Because for a driver, I need 2 germanium. It's given right over here, right? And then if I make 18 diodes after that, I'll need 1 germanium each for the 18. Then I'll need 58 germanium units, but I have only 50. So then again, my third one is also not possible. So then my answer is not possible, not possible, not possible for all three. I'll just mark not possible for all three, right? Once the data is there in front of your eyes, it will not be very difficult to connect the dots, right? Even though it might, all of it might seem confusing because it's on different tabs and you would keep switching from one to the other. That wouldn't work. But then once your data is right there in front of your eyes, it will not be very difficult. Look, eventually you have to answer a question on an average in 2 minutes, right? Even in data insights, you would get just a very little more than 2 minutes. So think about that you have to answer a question in 2 minutes. So the question is not going to be very tricky. Yeah. Here, of course, this set is a little tricky. It is not meant to be done in a timed manner. It is a part of your practice set. It is supposed to make you think, right, to how to connect various elements, etc. So once you are comfortable with it, solving actual GMAT questions will become much easier for you. Yeah. So don't worry about timing yourself in this data set. Just worry about understanding exactly how to solve the question.